Dan Wetzel of Yahoo Sports wrote an eye catcher, to say the least. And as you could see throughout the NFL media world, it's being picked up on because the punter, Matt Araiza, known as the punt god when he was in San Diego State University, and what he was able to do to flip fields, we noticed it. We gave him a weekly award for his work 2 years ago. It was an NIL deal when we were doing that sort of stuff 2 years ago. So we got to know him as best we could. And then we're equally as shocked as everybody else to learn that he was being named in a civil suit by a young lady in San Diego, accusing him of all sorts of awfulness and sexual assault. And Dan Wetzel joins us now in light of his column detailing what he could from a 200-plus page transcript obtained by Yahoo Sports of a 100-minute meeting between a deputy district attorney and the girl and her attorneys to say Matt Araiza, it appears, wasn't even there when a lot was going down in her lawsuit against him. So joining us here now is Dan Wetzel on the Rich Eisen Show from Yahoo. Thanks for calling, Dan. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, so what did you learn here about Matt Araiza, Dan?
Well, so we knew in December that the district attorney was not going to press any criminal charges involving this with against Matt Araiza or two other San Diego State teammates that were named in the civil lawsuit. But at that time, there were very few details released about why that was. And pursuing sexual assault cases is always very difficult. You have to prove the case criminally beyond a reasonable doubt. So it can always be a challenge. So you just don't really know. Obviously, it's a relief if you're the accused to not have to deal with a trial, but it doesn't necessarily. It's not really necessarily seen as a complete exoneration or anything like that. What was unsealed recently was an audio of a meeting that day held between the people from the district attorney's office, the girl who made the accusations, and one of her attorneys, and which is common. You would meet with somebody about this and explain why there's not going to be a charge. But because of the tape was out, released, you could hear over an hour and 40 minutes in really at times very detailed ways the concerns that the district attorney's office had with the case, and it included a conclusion based on a witness that the deputy DA found apparently very credible, that Araiza wasn't even present at the party and left the party before at least one of the allegations, the gang rape allegation. There's other talk of, there's cell phone snippets, videos of the encounters. There's, discussion of the sexual assault testing after. Different witness testimonies are brought up. It's not a complete, thorough picture, but there's a lot of exculpatory evidence or witness statements that, certainly for Matt Araiza, you would want out there. And so it's a very interesting recording. It's a little unusual for it to be out, but I guess that's what they do in that jurisdiction. And so for Matt Araiza, it shows a lot of things that certainly he believes that, if NFL teams listen to it, we'll have a better picture of who he is and what might have happened and what this case is about. So you're looking, he's in a weird, unusual situation, or maybe not, but he's looking to not just avoid criminal case. He still has a civil case pending, and he could still lose that. There's all sorts of stuff could go on with that. But at this very moment, at least, a lot of the exculpatory evidence or evidence that would seem to be positive for his side of the argument was able to get out there in this fashion.
So based on what you heard and what you obtained, that it appears that when this gang rape took place, there is no video from any of that where Araiza appears, and there is a witness that they find credible from the district attorney's office that said Araiza wasn't even there when that happened that night. is what you're saying.
That is correct. So the allegations against Matt Araiza, and he acknowledges he had a consensual sex with this girl. She's at the time 17 years old, and the question is, was he aware? The DA point. We have to prove that he's not just that you're 17, not 18, which is the age of consent. But do they know you're that, or is there any should he reasonably know? So to take this out of that, let's say you're at a high school party, you would assume the people at the party would be, high school age. If you were at a nightclub, you would have some reasonable. This is not a defense because you could probably find things, but if you're at a nightclub in San Diego, you could have a reasonable understanding that maybe everyone's over 21, right? Because they're supposed to be carded to get in. Obviously, we know that's not perfect, but you can understand the thing. So you have to prove both of those things. But the gang rape allegation, and that's really the most graphic thing that came out in the civil lawsuit that led to the Bills cutting Matt Araiza. It included this scene of him throwing the girl down on a bed in a room with and a gang rape starts. So the DA citing, it's one witness, but and the timeline that's set up has states in there that certainly they concluded that they believe he was not present at the time. So that is a significant story development for Matt Araiza's camp. Again, you go to a civil lawsuit, which is still going, you no longer need beyond a reasonable doubt in proof. You only need a preponderance of the evidence. It's a much lower bar to clear. So it's not that he's completely cleared legally. He still has the civil suit going. But obviously, if you're Matt Araiza, you want a district attorney to make that conclusion, and that conclusion to be made public for fans to understand what happened, what he says happened, and and teams to understand what he said happened.
Dan Wetzel of Yahoo Sports here on the Rich Eisen Show. What are the young ladies' attorneys saying? What's their response to your report? I guess did you reach out to them for comment on what you heard, Dan?
Yeah, the district attorneys. It's a statement in this meeting isn't a thorough declaration. There's only one witness cited, although we don't truly know all of the reasoning behind the DA's decision, so maybe there's more. It's immaterial to a civil case. He still had consensual sex with her. There's going to be a whole battle over did he know, did he not know, did he ask her age, did he not? Civil cases are civil cases, and there's still a lot to go on this. It's not, so obviously they don't. It's not great that this came out. I don't know. I don't want to characterize what their thoughts are, but there's still questions, is what they're saying. But certainly, if you listen to this full audio,
yes,
or you read the whole thing, it's long. It's a very, they lay out a very, very numerously angled thing of why there are considerable doubts onto the story that was given to them. And I think that's a fair characterization of what was said in this meeting.
Dan Wetzel of Yahoo Sports here on the Rich Eisen Show. So last question for you on this is, look, you know the world of professional football. Yeah. There still seems to be a considerable amount out there that, despite the exculpatory evidence being laid bare here by the prosecution, that Araiza still is entangled in something. What do you think? Or is it still too early to tell? What do you think? Did you reach out to anybody to glean how this might be received in the NFL community? Looking for a punter?
That's the question. Do they need the civil suit to go away? Right. Mm-hmm. So civil suits are almost always settled, and Jalen Carter, right? He had the incident in Georgia before the draft, right? He settled the criminal thing, and now he still has a civil suit out. Nobody really cares. He was drafted ninth, or maybe they care, and that's why he went ninth instead of whatever. But it's not unusual for someone to play in the NFL with a civil suit. Anybody can get sued civilly for anything. So that obviously is a very sensitive nature of this story. So it's hang out there. So do you have to move past it? But if you settle the suit, you can't. If you're omitting anything, does that play a role in it? I don't know what the NFL will do. I do think that if NFL teams sit down and listen to the whole thing, they'll have a different perspective after listening than before. And is that enough? I don't know. It's really hard for me to say. It only takes one team to say, sure, let's do this. The big issue is he's a punter, right? And I know this is extremely crude, but it's also reality. He's a quarterback. It's one thing. Punter specialists can't be distractions, right? Punt, are you willing to take the PR hit or the concerns over that? Do you sign? So I don't know. He's a punter. He's a good punter. He seemed to be a very promising punter, but he's still a punter. So what happens with the NFL, I don't know. But that does loom over this because certainly he would like to return to the NFL and play. So there's a lot there, and I think anybody who listens to it would have it's graphic and it's detailed and it's interesting, if you will.
Dan Wetzel, Yahoo Sports here on the Rich Eisen Show college football podcast that everybody should listen to. And, of course, a New York Times bestseller here on the program. While I have you here, and I know this is completely insignificant with what we've talked about, but while I have you here, there was a rule change that came out a couple of weeks ago. They're going to wind the clock on a first down now, right? Is this a game time concern? Is that what it is? Like pace of play? Has there actually been this conversation in college football that 4-hour games are a little bit much? Dan? So it's happening?
Yeah, they're going to wind the clock. They're no longer stopping after first downs, except the last 2 minutes of the games, which is really the most important part. And opens up the middle of the field, right? And you can get a first down over the middle. You can even run the ball and go down and huddle up fairly quickly, which is an important part of the college game. It's really hard. The NFL players can kind of do it, but it's one thing when you have Burrow and Mahomes and those guys.
Right.
It's another when you have a college offense trying to just use the sideline to stop the clock. So you're going to keep that. But, yeah, they were trying to speed up the game a little bit. The games were getting too long. They certainly weren't going to cut the number of commercials, which would be the easiest way to speed up the game. Anyone has sat through this. It was also some player safety. This will take, they're not sure. 7 minutes out, 7 plays a game out. Well, you do that over the season. That's basically a whole game. They're expanding the college football playoffs. Some teams are going to play 16 games. You could conceivably play 17 games. So they're sensitive to that. And so they're expanding the season. There's more games for certain teams. By taking the plays out, it's not how many games you play. It's like pitching, right? It's not how many innings you pitch, how many pitches you throw. So it's sort of a dual thing on that they're going to take some plays out. It should save some stay, and it should, I don't know. Fans are college football fans are very passionate. They're not looking for less college football, but others, the more casual viewer, is going to be more interested probably in a 3-hour, 10-minute game than a 3-hour, 45-minute game.
And then what about any seismic shifts in conferences, things of that nature? I know the Pac, they're always rumbling. I know that. I mean, Pac-12 still has a TV deal to maybe land or not. Dion's there now. Does that make it more, interesting for a television package? That Prime is now there in Colorado. Is there any other conference seismic shifts that are in the ether that you can give us a heads up on?
Prime does not hurt. Well, there's no question about that. He should generate some interest. Of course, you're signing a multi-year deal, and you have no idea how long Deion Sanders will coach Colorado. There's no guarantee. It's not tied to that. You tie in Colorado, but you wouldn't be able to assure that Deion Sanders is there. But he certainly does not help, and he brings a lot of excitement to the league. What the Pac-12 deal looks like is going to be important. The Big 12 is ready to take from the Pac-12. And if this deal is not financially competitive with what the Big 12 can offer, and in terms of exposure. How much is on streaming? Streaming might pay, but for recruiting and promotional purposes, you need to be on over-the-air or cable or something that kids are seeing, not logging into something. So it's a dual track there for the Pac-12. They need to come up with a good competitive program, and I think everybody in the Pac-12 wants to stay together. But if not, the Big 12 is sitting there. Certainly Oregon and Washington are very desirable programs. The Big Ten right now has said they're not going to expand anymore, but that can all change. But even the what they call the corner schools, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado, the Big 12 would love to add those ones. And does that, if they can sit there and say, hey, you'll make more money and be on TV more, come here. So this deal is, almost every late June, there's some huge thing. Oklahoma, Texas go to the SEC 2 years ago. USC, UCLA go to the Big Ten last year. Does this blow up? Everyone's waiting on that Pac-12 deal, and it's impossible to predict what would happen until that gets done.
Dan, thanks for the time. Greatly appreciate it. Very eye-opening column. Everyone should go check out on Yahoo Sports as everything that you write. I appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
Thanks, Rich. Talk to you later.
Right back at you. That's Dan Wetzel, columnist of Yahoo Sports, right here. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.